Thank you, Dr. John Momis. I'm really excited that we're having a second session because after our first interview, we had a lot of good feedback from our audience and they had more questions and some said, oh, Doctor has to write his book and get his life story out. And, yeah, so thank you for coming and joining us again today. We're going to cover at least 3 broad topics today. One is, I wanted to cover, hopefully, if you don't mind, some philosophy, knowing that you're a seminarian. I know that you were schooled in philosophy and of course throughout your life as a philosopher, I would say. But then also zoom into our Constitution and the CPC report, and then zoom further into Bougainville. So that's what I think we'll cover today. But yeah, so that's what we do. But we'll cut here and allow David to ask his question, and because I want your answer to him maybe to be on our record as well. His question is regarding the head of state in the constitutional monarchy and what the CPC thoughts around that was versus what we actually got by way of our constitution. So, David, dear, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Chef. I've read through the Constitutional Planning Committee report in 1974, and I came across with this particular chapter 7. It actually recommended against Papua New Guinea adopting the British monarchy as head of state. And I believe it was the government at the time, or government of the day, rejected that recommendation, and they made a decision to have a head of state, but they didn't settle on who to become the head of state. At the very last minute, according to section 82 of the Constitution, we wrote a letter to the Queen of England, inviting her to become not only the head of state, but also the Queen of Papua New Guinea and the head of state at the same time. And my question now is, your committee recommended against. So why did we? Whose idea was it that we adopted it and subjected, in my view, we subjected the nation, subject the nation to a foreign power. So we are now being ruled over. So that is my problem. So if you can at least set some light on that so we understand how the historical background of sections 82 and 83, 84, and 85 of the Constitution. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, David, for your question regarding PNG having a foreign sovereign as our head of state, as Queen. Now, if you read the Constitutional Planning Committee's report, the Constitutional Planning Committee explicitly promoted that all the recommendations, policies, systems have one objective, and that is to promote Papua New Guineans, Papua New Guinea culture, highly diversified cultures and languages, but to promote Papua New Guinea as a nation of highly diversified cultures and languages. And we believe that unless our Constitution and our laws discriminate in favor of Papua New Guineans, we would be subjecting the indigenous people of this dependent nation, the dependent colony, forever to foreign ideologies and institutions. And that is why we recommended, the CPC was quite categorical in rejecting having a foreign sovereign as head of state of Papua New Guinea, because we believed, in accordance with the principle of autochthony, God gave power to the people of Papua New Guinea, and through the electoral process, the people mandate their representatives who would be the lawmakers. The representatives in a democracy are not the bosses. They're not the chiefs. The people are the chiefs. The representatives are the Indians. It seems the chiefs are now having problems with the bloody Indians. Sorry, with the yes, probably I should have laughed.
So,
You know, yes.
Doctor, in terms of that transition, there was that recommendation was one of, like we talked about last time, one of those things that was rejected by the House of Assembly, and when the Constitution was eventually adopted, the Queen of England became the Queen of Papua New Guinea. So, what was the thinking going on to that transition? Why was CPC's recommendation rejected?
At the time, at the critical time, the Lord Mountbatten, I think it was the uncle of the Duke or the Queen, visited Papua New Guinea. And before that, our leader, Chief Somare himself, was in favor of having of making PNG a republic, not subject to a foreign queen or head of state. Sovereign. But when the Lord Mountbatten visited, they negotiated, and I guess out of respect, the government agreed to have the Queen, which the CPC was totally against. But even then, although we didn't get what we wanted, we made sure that the head of state, that the Governor General who represents the Queen, is a figurehead. He would only do what NEC, the National Executive Council, recommends, and specifically what the National Executive Council recommended, and not anything else. So really, the Governor General is a rubber stamp. So we didn't lose everything. We made sure that the head of state, although he represented the Queen, I'm not trying to criticize, but this is the logic that we followed. The head of state must do only what the NEC recommends, and nothing else. So, sometimes it's rubber stamp, that's all.
Was there anything that England, if you know, what in that negotiations?
Well,
anything they promised to us in terms of when they allowed that conduit, I suppose.
I guess they used this argument that Papua New Guinea would be a member of the Commonwealth and would benefit from the collective wisdom and power of the Commonwealth nations. But that was, you can be a member of the Commonwealth without becoming having a foreign queen. India is a member of the Commonwealth. India is a republic. There are other countries who are members of the Commonwealth, but who are not subject to the English sovereign. So there were a lot of things which were which were used to convince the members of Parliament, or the government especially, that it would benefit Papua New Guinea by having Papua New Guinea having a Queen as head of state. We totally disagreed with, but we made sure that the head of state did not have any independent power. No real power.
So moving, how these conversations are coming up now from time to time. People talk about the conversation of last year, the previous year, has been about the election of the Prime Minister. Is there in your mind, if we started looking at doing away with the constitutional monarchy, or doing away with the monarchy, and then if we became a republic, and elected, say, a president, someone who will be like a royal assent office or office of royal assent that will approve or rubber stamp decisions of the executive. Is that something that we should consider? What's the form of the republic that we should consider if we're going to consider it?
Well, the CPC at the time didn't have much time to consider the different options. All we were interested in was to have a government that would be solely responsible to the electors, the people of Papua New Guinea. We didn't look at different options of having whether to have a republic or have a democratically elected government, not subject to the, but having a democratically elected government headed by a prime minister who would be still subject to the electors' will.
All right. So thanks, David. I think we'll pause that section of the discussion. We might come back to it. But Dr. John Momis, I wanted to zoom back to your early days when we talked about your seminarial training. And I wanted to ask a specific question on key philosophers that kind of shaped your thinking, or you thought their ideas were relevant, significant for yourself and for Papua New Guinea through your seminarial teaching as well as in your own learning and going through the years.
We did, in those days, the major seminary taught both theology and philosophy, and of course canon law and other disciplines that would enable the Papua New Guinea priests to have sufficient education to be ministers of serving the people. In our studies, Thomas Aquinas, who was considered, a great theologian, the Catholic Church is considered probably the greatest theologian. We studied a lot of his work, and St. Augustine, and of course there are others. But the main thing that we learned was that man is a rational animal. Man is yes, he's an animal, but he's rational. In other words, he is endowed with an intellect and a will, which differentiate man from other animals and from minerals and vegetables. Man is the masterpiece and pinnacle of God's creation. I'm number one said it, because we got freedom, and we can analyze with his intellect. We can school learning plan is something that enables him to analyze, compare, do a critical analysis of things, and then he makes up his mind. He chooses one way or the other, and even God cannot interfere with his choice, because let me give him finish. You are free. That's why we have to be very careful. So if you freely choose wrong something, consequence wrong, you must accept the detrimental consequences of your bad decision. But man is, long theology, man is also a co-creator. He's not only the masterpiece of God's creation. He's a co-creator. He's not just a creature. He's a co-creator. Can I explain this? Yes. Yeah. Saint Athanasius, in the 3rd century, long time ago. He said, at Christmas, God becomes man. He's the same God, beginning from God, and become a man. At Easter, man becomes God. When Jesus, the man who died, rises from the dead, he rises as a man. Because God did not die. The time the Slamani died and become back, he rose as man. But when he rose from death. He did something that no other human being was able to do. And that was only because he took on divine faculties. So emi Jesus emi God na mantu. So time me kirap me too you me. Well, some thanks to the they call it thanks to the Paschal mystery. Jesus come a man and me suffer, he die and kirap back. That's called Paschal mystery. Thanks to the Paschal mystery, man acquires divine faculties, divine powers. So, already something on ground, man is empowered to transform this world. The creation of God is now in the hands of man. So, we're assuming a walking boat, and by incomplete, you may go down long last day and we go now. God be talk, man, by God, I gave you all these powers, and the job you've done for me is incomplete. So you must work hard through to transform this world. Do our best to make sure it's the best we can offer back to God. So really, man, when you look at man's nature, I mean, no human being, nothing. And also we got big power. God gave him now powers which we wouldn't have had Jesus not died and rose from the dead.
And when we talk about man, we are talking about not just man as a collective, we're talking about man as the individual.
Yes.
And I wanted to maybe pick your
Man and
brains.
woman, yes.
Men and women
Yeah.
having the agency for
Yeah.
their own lives for change and to create change in the world. In PNG, I think I was just discussing with our brother Joey here regarding the conflict or the struggle or the tension between the collective good and the individual freedom and individual dignity. What's your view as you look at how we are operating now as a nation? Sometimes when you look at granting personal freedom, personal autonomy, sometimes that might be at the expense of the common good, and then vice versa. Sometimes when we look at trying to ensure the common good for the people at large, we are infringing on individual rights, freedoms, and individual agency. How do we balance that tension?
Yes, in the PNG Constitution, this particular aspect of man's obligation makes PNG Constitution quite unique. I don't think there is any other constitution that talks about it. The PNG Constitution promotes human rights. At the same time, and this the other constitutions don't do, it promotes social obligations. We all have a social obligation to recognize other people's rights and our responsibility to look after the environment, our cultures, things that belong to all of us. We must look after it. Long narapala constitution, long narapala. We talk about social human rights. So people just concentrate on human rights. They forget about that. They also have an obligation, social obligation, to promote the community, the common good. And what is the common good? The common good is something that all of us benefit from. And it doesn't exclude anybody from benefiting from this common good. You know, that is why a lot of us are making a big mistake. And this applies, Sarah, let me say, this applies to leaders. The leadership code was encouraged by this theology. The leadership code is a moral code. The leadership code applies to leaders only, not to other citizens. The leadership code, now I'm not a member of parliament anymore. I guess I'm a chancellor of UNRE, so as such I'm also covered by the leadership code. The leadership code says leaders are obliged to do certain things which ordinary members of society are not obliged to do. For example, in Australia, a minister, I think, or member of parliament, forgot to declare a bottle of wine coming from overseas. When that was reported in the evening news, The man resigned the next morning. PNG Nogat. You know? Because leaders are very special people. Leaders are role models. Leaders are people you look at, young people look at and say, my God, we must school good now, me like come up, good play leader too. Moral behavior belong leader. I mean, important. I mean, belong all bishop na lo, or big man, or lotu man so. And belong you me all get a man. So it was Papa I belong spark all the time. Fighting Mama all the time. One kind of impression that will have on the children. Does it help them to grow integrally? Integral human development, we talk to learn come up good? No, that's true. So, and what plus PNG Constitution, it emphasizes both the human rights and social obligations. Two must balance.
And the other conflict or tension is the tension between the integral human rights and what is termed in the Constitution as the public interest, or that's the constitutional term we have for the common good.
Yes.
And you have when the laws are created, and the Constitution says when acts of Parliament are created that will have the effect of infringing on human rights, freedom of expression, for example, freedom of movement. If there are laws, for example, now we have cybercrime laws, we have defamation laws, we have laws about all different things that affect freedom of expression, freedom of speech. Those kinds of laws must always be declared to be in the interest of public good. So for me, I'm looking at this, and this is the tension where our lawmakers have to make a balance between the public interest. What is the public interest? And when it ends up in courts apply, different ways to come to a understanding or a definition of public interest. But I always come back to the concept of integral human development. And it's a concept of the individual freeing himself from all forms of domination and oppression, personally freeing himself. So it seems to me like, on one hand, the Constitution is elevating individual freedom, individual dignity, but then on the other hand, it's also saying, well, the public interest must also be protected. And then therefore you have all these laws. So my question was, how do we balance that? Because I think that goal number one, the individual freedom, I think that must be supreme. And for me, I'm thinking that the lawmakers, if they have to err on the side of granting more freedom and more power to the individual, rather than granting more public interest or common good kind of laws or interests. So that would be an accurate way of resolving this tension?
Integral human development applies to everybody, right? Everybody must have integral human development. It's holistic development, not just power, not just money or intellectual development, but moral, as well as other cultural. And that must be preserved if the public interest is against that, then public interest must be looked at again, because sometimes the public interest is immoral. It's not right. Now, for the good of the community, we do this, because in the final analysis, it's the best interest or the morally upright values of the human being that are ultimate. They must be upheld.
The Constitution puts it this way. I like how the Constitution says that we assert by virtue of that authority
Yes.
with the people, that respect for the dignity of the individual and community interdependence are basic principles of society. Is there when you think about it, that's kind of like the idea that the CPC had, that the individual dignity must be protected, but it is not too much separate from community interdependence, which is.
Well, interdependence is a must, because in any community you must. It's not just my total good that I'm looking at. I must be concerned about. I'm a member of the community.
Yeah.
So interdependence is interdependence. When you argue about things, for example, when you're negotiating, I'm a great believer in consultative and consensual mode of decision making. I have my views on things, but in order to have peace, I must accept your position, at least the what I call the substance of your position. I do away with all the paraphernalia, all the bilas, and making me look good. My browsing bilas. What is the substance? What Mr. Ganjiki wants. I accept it, and you too, you must look long substance from me. And we can then work with all the paraphernalia, and we may come together and collaborate. Collaboration is a good thing.
Yeah.
Not uniform. Don't just push one thing. I've got very. That's why I saw ecumenism. We have different Christian churches and even non-Christian churches. Christian churches have an obligation to ecumenically collaborate with other churches.
Is that what ecumenism means?
Ecumenism means, yes, different churches work together. Even though, the substance of what the Christian churches stand for is the same, actually.
Yeah.
But even with, say, Muslims and others, Muslims are actually, the Catholic Church, Muslims accept what the Catholic Church accepts in many things. Like, we Catholics believe that Mary is the mother of Jesus and Jesus is God. Therefore, we say she's the mother of God. Muslims look at that. So, I think there's a lot of unnecessary confrontation between Christian churches and others, because you insist, you must accept everything, willy-nilly, everything I want. And I think that is not right.
It's a good segue into my next question was on a specific event that happened in our nation's history. And that is a 2009 event wherein the Prime Minister at that time,
2007,
he signed a covenant, what was known in the churches as the covenant with God, but it was a unilateral covenant, and it bound the nation of Papua New Guinea to a certain extent to certain things and obligations. And in that statement, the Prime Minister read out in the covenant was that we put away all idols and and it was almost like an attempt to Christianize the nation in a clean sweep, in a stroke of a pen, so to speak. Are you aware of that, and what are your thoughts on that? Because that's in fact, there's some different thoughts within the church that I'm aware of, some in agreement, some in opposition to it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that one?
I was not in Parliament then, so I didn't really have the inside information on this covenant. But reading about it, the covenant was fraudulent because the Prime Minister didn't go through the proper process of getting the authority of the government to sign this covenant. So legally it was fraudulent, and theologically fraudulent as well, because a covenant, the real covenant is Jesus Christ, the person, not a piece of paper. Jesus Christ is a covenant between God and man. And God man, Jesus Christ. So theologically it's threat, a legally threat, because the Prime Minister may have they might have convinced him that it's a good thing, but lumaking government must process long and pass them.
Yeah. And theologically and maybe spiritually speaking, things like this, bounding ourselves to God in a way that kind of attracts obligations, maybe. Um, and you know, the Bible tells us, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Do not swear by heaven or earth, and so on and so forth. Do you think that maybe we have dug a hole and put ourselves into that hole by maybe putting ourselves in a way that we have attracted the disfavor of God and maybe even brought curse upon ourselves when we act as a nation or as individuals, or you know, in any other way, in contradiction to what we committed to in that covenant? Is there any that kind of risk or spiritual element of that covenant that you would see being a problem for us now?
The covenant, as I said, man has a very serious responsibility to commit it himself to a covenant or law or agreement that accepts God as his, not only the creator but the liberator as well. It's not, maybe the churches should have, I mean, the Grand Chief was not a theologian, and he should have, they should have given him, it should have been discussed further by the churches, and I think they would have come to a different kind of covenant.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame him for.
No, it
that.
wasn't his
He was
fault.
counseled,
That's
obviously,
right,
by
yeah.
certain
Yeah,
elements within the church,
yeah,
and the church would be bearing the responsibility
Yeah.
if it was done. It wasn't in a way that was pleasing to God, or even
Yeah.
legally,
Yeah.
theologically legal, or
Yeah.
constitutionally legal. The, if we can zoom now into like the Constitution and particularly the back here. Oh, what's it? Good, okay. In terms of the, I want to start with the provisions relating to amending the Constitution. The CPC obviously tried to make entrenched or a difficult process for amending the Constitution. But despite that, we have had a lot of constitutional amendments, and we're only 40 years, going 50 years old, but we've had so many constitutional amendments. We now have a proposed constitutional amendment on the floor of Parliament that apparently first and second reading was passed. And we had not had any widespread consultation on that. What are your thoughts on amending the Constitution, and do you see if we are living up to what the CPC intended for the entrenching of the Constitution? Are we living up to that entrenchment, or is it being abused, or the loophole has been exploited too many times, to the extent that we are now having constitutional amendments that are probably not aimed at the greater good or the good of the nation? They're probably more aimed at protecting the political powers that be at the time.
the Constitution as we have it today is not exactly the Constitution we recommended. The CPC recommendations are quite different. The Parliament, the Constituent Assembly, made a lot of changes. And even, members of the CPC, the Prime Minister himself, the Pangu Party, and the opposition, led by Sete Abal, United Party, they made separate submissions from the CPC, some of which were quite contrary to the well thought out recommendations of the CPC. These were sort of a reaction, from members of Parliament, which
They went outside the committee. And
some of them were members of the committee,
yeah.
but they were it was imposed on them by their parties, not well thought out. So suppose you can send this constitutional or this send this mutla, because if the CPC's recommendation were fully accepted, we would have a very different constitution.
What would that look like? what would be the process of amending the Constitution if CPC had its way?
To change it now.
Yeah, like the amending process. Like right now, the amending process to the Constitution is simply 2 readings separated by, is it 1 month?
Yeah. No, CPC was very, very,
The absolute majority behind.
CPC was very strong that the Constitution is the basic law of, it's a written, what do you call, written form of the rights and obligations of people. You know, the Constitution just recognizes that, doesn't give it to the people. The Constitution doesn't give these rights to people. They actually own them. But unfortunately, the amendment process, the government has to go back to the people and consult them. We carried out probably the most, in-depth consultation with the people of Papua New Guinea.
Yeah, very extensive.
Very extensive, yes. And what we got from them was, we asked them questions. We didn't tell them, we didn't give them options, A, B, C, or D. We asked them questions, and we left these questions with them. Apart from having public meetings, we broke up into 2, and we toured the whole nation. But in each district, they're known, we left questions for them to discuss and submit their thoughts in written form to the CPC. We consulted probably more than any other constitution, any other committee before. Before us, we had the Paulus Arek Committee, Commission, they didn't call it committee. And this commission traveled, went to Africa, Asia. When the CPC was established, I was the deputy chairman. Chief was the chairman. But as his hands were becoming more and more full, as Canberra transferred more powers to Konedobu, he got so busy, so I actually became de facto chairman. And I said, I was under a lot of pressure to go overseas to look at Africa and Asia. I said in Tok Pisin, suppose you like sum up him suit, short of trousers from Papua New Guinea man, you can go mark him Africa or Asia. I'm got another kind of size. Suppose you like him, walk him trousers, man belong Papua New Guinea, go long palace and ask him all. Get the proper sizes. So I refused. I was very unpopular. But in the end, a lot of the members understood the importance of getting it right. What is eating up our people? What are their bellyaches? And the CPC, if you read it, is not ashamed to say we discriminate pro-people. We discriminate in favor of Papua New Guineans. The laws, systems that we should be developing now must be to promote Papua New Guinea development. Papua New Guinea entrepreneurs, not just getting people from outside to come and generate revenue so we can be spoon-fed, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, that sort of thing. No, people like to teach them how to fish. Papua New Guineans must be the agents of change and development. They themselves must participate in the process of governance and also in the process of development. Participation is part of the development. If you don't participate, now you give him finished product on Naraplaman. That is not development.
There's, I put out a post, I think, last week, and I thought, if the Constitution is to be amended, and if we are to protect it, because in my view, if you have the rate at which we're going, which is almost every term of parliament, the government is introducing constitutional amendments. In the space of 5 years, probably 1 or 2. And like we've been 50 years now, we've almost had 40 amendments, or if I'm correct, wrong, correct, I need to be corrected on that. But we have so many amendments. The rate we go, when we're about 100 years old as a nation, we will have an unrecognizable constitution.
That's right.
If every parliament, every new government comes in, they want to change the constitution to fit their time, but then it becomes so messed up over the long term. So a lot of the politicians these days, they seem to me to be thinking only of their terms of parliament and maybe the next one term that they intend to run for and come back. But they're not looking generations ahead. They're not looking generations ahead and say, well, how can we change the law now that will have a generational impact? In other words, thinking about how the nation will operate when they are no longer alive, when they have gone and their grandchildren are now running the country. They don't seem to be thinking along those lines. So when I think about amendment to the Constitution, I think it has to reflect legally as a mandatory requirement. It has to reflect what the CPC did. In other words, there has to be a compulsory, mandatory nationwide consultation before it's even introduced to Parliament.
Well, many members of Parliament today, I'm sorry to say, have no idea what an integral human development is all about. They don't. They don't know what equitable distribution of goods and services and power is about. Equitable distribution of power. The principle of subsidiarity says, it's a very important social principle of the Christian churches. Catholic Church really promotes it. Says, bigger bodies must not usurp the role of smaller bodies. This, today, our government is no different from the colonial government. Highly centralized and bureaucratized, except that it is not as efficient. The colonial government was highly centralized and bureaucratized. The bloody bureaucrats ran it. People like go and people like talk, no. Although we knew that Australians were better managers, better administrators, in the interest of democracy and the interest of Papua New Guinean right, ultimate Papua New Guinean right to own this country, we said we would rather go for independence now and be involved in the process ourselves. Process of what? Process of liberating ourselves. Process of development. Process of government. Make a mistake too, and you're right. People are lying or something. And this process, don't blame us for the inefficiency. Now look at something now. All the colonial government never prepared their colonies well for independence. Never. And Australia had no. We were the first colony. At the time when, in the 60s, there were no university graduates, maybe a few from Australia, Papua New Guineans. Papua New Guinean public, as independence as Somalia was really pushing for independence, despite the fact that we were not administratively competent or able, he said, if we don't make changes now, we will forever be dependent. He didn't like the fact that we were being made to be dependent on foreign power. They were dictating everything. They were merely giving us what they thought was the best for us. And at the time, there were very few, in fact, those who were being made heads of government, heads of departments were in their 20s. And it was unfair. Yeah. Nothing was done. So, and that not only Australia, English too, English probably a little bit better, I don't know. But English colonial government, you work in one kind. As well as Africa is strong, only go on, only come up now, also now. So we cannot forever be dependent.
Yeah. So do you think, in my post last week, I was in terms of that constitutional amending process. Do you think we should make it mandatory that they have
Oh yes. Consultation with the people.
So in my mind, I think that should be the last amendment that should come under current process.
Exactly. It is said that the consultation we carried out under very difficult conditions.
Yeah.
The colonial government didn't like it. Chief, master trailblazer, top Nogat. People like, some of us were really, people like the country blow me player. So me like going around and get up. And I must say, we left in each province, in each district in those days, people who left questions for them to answer, and there were members that they themselves appointed. And, much later, even after independence, we meeting planning man, young people who said, oh, me member belong committee belong you. And I thought, of course, of the CPC. But then I realized I meant me member belong committee belong long province in the district. We left every district. Man only sit down, they had written submissions to us, apart from the public meetings we had. So our people were very, very much involved.
The people have to be involved in the constitutional amendment process. It's when Waigani just does it behind closed doors, they end up coming with all these silly rules, and people are even surprised by it.
I can say without any fear or favor that government in Migat today is no different from the colonial government. Highly centralized and bureaucratized. They've removed 1995, or the power of provincial governments. The only region which has power is Bougainville. And so Bougainville good is suffer on no leadership. We got power, having autonomous powers, that's huge. But what's the use of buying a new Toyota from the manufacturer and a good driver? Systems are important, but leadership is probably more important, because leadership will make the system work. And the leadership must be committed to social obligations. Right, that's so long, or member and people to obligations, love your neighbor as yourself. I cannot think I will go to heaven if I leave my mates behind. By big money to go na pa ni mo puro mame to. I'm only sparky stuff to go kisi mo come.
Let's talk about Bougainville now, and I wanted to maybe get your perspective of the history of Bougainville. In terms of you had mentioned, and I think when I interviewed Dr. Thomas Webster and in my later podcast after yours, that the first constitutional amendment, which was on the provincial government, was sparked by Bougainville's response to our constitution, in a way that Bougainville was feeling left out or feeling like they had been taken disempowered effectively by the constitution, and therefore there was some push, if I'm not mistaken, there was a push by Bougainville and at the same time Papua Besena to not be part of this new nation. And you had mentioned, or Dr. Thomas Webster mentioned, that Bougainville had actually declared its own independence.
But that's after.
That's
But anyway,
after 1975. Is that correct?
No, even before that. But what I mean is, the thing started much earlier. Bougainville was given a rough deal.
Right.
Bougainville was a district that produced copra and cocoa, big amounts. They contributed. They had some of the best people in the police force and the army. So it was, not the highest educated, but at the time, Bougainville was making a huge contribution. But in return, we were getting bugger all. In return, no God. And now me, as a member for Bougainville, I was in the seminary, and when CRA, Bougainville Copai come, there were a lot of institutions and leaders who were just standing by and watching. Nobody had the guts, nobody had the interest to support the landowners. The only man, foreigner, who supported the Panguna landowners when they were being exploited and pushed around by the colonial government was the Catholic Bishop of Bougainville, an American. And all he did was, he told the government, look, these people have their own custom. Why don't you respect their custom? Well, Sunday, don't just come and take over. It's not yours. And of course, the government didn't like him at all. And of course, I was studying to be a priest. And when I was I
What
taught
year was this around?
1970s. I taught at no. When I got involved, was in the 60s, late 60s. I got involved when at 68, but it was in the 60s, 63, 64. Really, no God Naraplam man stood up for the people. Nobody, no leader, nobody. Except Paul Lapon, he was a member for South Bougainville. And I spoke at a combined council conference. I said, look, the district commissioner was appointed, was specially sent to Bougainville to fix his natives by the name of Ashton. You couscous nothing. The members of this combined council conference are our politicians. They're semi-politicians. And you have no right to be criticize them all. Wala lo kanaka so was busy aligo by play go no laplap saban over booze na, And I told him, I got so angry.
What was the interest of the native, the people that
The people were saying, you must take into account our own laws.
Right.
We the owners of this
land?
land and resources, according to our custom, that's our land. You can't just come and take over.
They came in the power of the state.
Yeah.
The license.
And they sent police, some of the toughest district the Kiaps, But the people stood up to them. And I took a plunge. As a priest, I took a plunge into the abyss of human affairs. And I experienced powerlessness with the people. I stood up for them and fought on principles. And then I realized that the best way of helping people is not distributing goods and services. Because the government was trying to do that, but that was not enough. The best way of helping people, is to empower them. Empower them. Don't give them bloody goods and services. Because you can always withdraw goods and services. So that's why my commitment. I'm now only people of Bougainville. By then later I went back to seminary. I finished and became a priest. And Bougainville before I'm Triple Main Church, I'm United Church, SDA, and a Catholic. So they got together and when you go look at Bishop now, they talk people like Manasana. Bishop, no, they said, we have tried lay people and they've let us down. So the bishop was more or less forced. So he reluctantly agreed. And first thing I said in Parliament when I was Parliament with Tabloya, my first speech in Parliament, it was like my maiden speech. I moved that the House of Assembly must set a mining policy according to which companies from Baikamna working agreement with the government of Papua New Guinea, the government of Papua New Guinea must protect and promote the interests of the landowners. My first speech, 1972. Bloody colonial don't like Haramstead. You can't have an agreement if you don't have a policy. The policy is the background which you use because it tells you the interest of the people, the interest of the country, and so on and so on. Interest of company too. And,
Do you think we have that now? Do we have
Yes, we have now. We have now.
good guidance in terms of how we negotiate our
Yes.
mining
I think we do.
Yeah.
There could be, as the president of Bougainville, time me come up president of autonomous government, we moved because we do have some powers, legislative powers. So my government moved that the landowners own the resources, not the government, along Bougainville. And before you can set up a mine, you must negotiate with the landowners. And of course, ABG and company you like bring him in.
Yeah.
And people were happy with that. They said, okay. You just have to recognize, people are not asking for things on a golden platter, you know, gifts. No, they're asking fairness. Allow us to tell you exactly what we need. Then we will accept whatever the result of the negotiations are.
In terms of the Bougainville crisis, what in your mind were the main triggers in terms of the conflict itself, and that's escalated into this war and this violence? What were the triggers of that conflict?
Oh, national government was wrong with it. I was, I was the member for Bougainville. I was telling them they wouldn't listen to me. Bitoki Moral. The BCL, the government was with BCL. They just didn't listen to the people. And they even sent police to beat up women and try to force them. And in fact, in 1977, I was studying in Australia at the time, this major seminary there, and it was on TV. The riots Kodigo and Alipaiti Mulmeri Rodovana, the women of Rodovana village, just outside of Loloho.
What was the reason? What was the trigger?
Because they were against.
They were marching or protesting?
Protesting against the company just taking over the land at Loloho.
Right.
And all they were wanting is respect us, we'll sit down and talk with you. The government was very heavy-handed. It wouldn't listen to the members as well.
Effectively, no negotiations. It was just a one-way.
That's right, yeah. Yes, and also, in the beginning, and we talk out, people felt that they were being, they were producing, they were not getting what was commensurate with what they were contributing to the nation. In terms of personality, as personnel, as well, in terms of personnel, in terms of contribution, the monetary contribution from copper and cocoa and so on and so forth. And when I became when I became the deputy chairman of the constitutional planning, that was the best time to negotiate. And my colleague who studied with me, Leo Hannett, just came back from Hawaii. And he was a radical student, and he really went back and he really stirred up the people, and I said to Chief, Chief, you appoint Leo Hannett your special advisor on Bougainville. So he did. And Leo, to give him credit, managed to mobilize the people of North Bougainville, Central Bougainville, and South Bougainville, and got them to agree that Bougainville will have the highest autonomy, or even that so long ago. And they were satisfied. But the Nong Nongs up here, on the advice of some Australian bureaucrats, wouldn't have that. They wouldn't listen to me as a regional member. They wouldn't listen to the Combined Council Conference. Autonomy. And they, not only they said, because of Bougainville situation, all right, Bougainville will get highest autonomy, but it's open to other districts in Papua New Guinea, as and when they were ready. Don't impose it uniformly, because some districts in those days were not ready. And that, in fact, that was the reason why many provincial governments went wrong, because it was not given when the provinces were ready.
This is blanket granting.
Yes, and many provinces were not ready, but they were really for the first time experiencing having a say in building a nation.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, because they were Mronglo national government thing, they were withholding. It was a real battle. There was a big fight. Had some of us not been around, there would be nothing done.
Yeah.
The bureaucrats, even Papua New Guineans, were against us because they were brainwashed by the Australian colonial people here.
So fast forward to, when now the PNG government has granted autonomy to Bougainville. Is it to the satisfaction of the people of Bougainville that the powers that we granted so far?
Before we talk here, it was a special Bougainville agreement for Bougainville, but in the agreement it was stipulated that the same would be granted to any other province as and when they were ready. They had the capacity.
That's the
77 one.
agreement.
So that was already agreed in that.
There's already an in principle
Yeah, agreement.
grant.
Yeah.
How?
We heard in Bougainville that the army was being prepared to come. So my contacts here, because by then I had resigned, because the Constituent Assembly, the parliament turned into a Constituent Assembly, made a very, very bad decision. They decided to delete Chapter 10 from the Constitution, which was on decentralization, structural distribution of power. Only delete him.
And that would have been the initial decentralization provision of the Constitution.
Only Rauchim Mogeda.
So it was removed completely.
Removed completely.
Okay.
And the people of Bougainville then said to me, well, that's the only hope the national government had of keeping Bougainville. So
Right.
must keep you. So if, well, I could have stayed on, but I was pressured
Conflicted.
by me and Rafael Bele was a member of Central Bougainville. Paul Lapone and Donatus Mola were our ministers, so but Rafael Bele and myself were instructed to leave, resign. So we resigned. I worked so hard for this country, and I did not enjoy independence. I was not here for independence. And when I resigned and went home, they said the leaders met and wanted to have a couple of people to go to the UN. But then the people were reluctant to volunteer, so me long man, me volunteer. Because I'm a priest, I have no family, I'll go on your behalf. Didn't know exactly what to do, but I said, I'll go. So another person, in fact, John Tiosin, I don't know whether you remember, he was the head of the Ahalis welfare movement from Book Island. Anyway, he was my colleague. We went to the United Nations, presented our case. And in fact, we even said to the UN, please delay independence so we can work out something with Papua New Guinea. But the bloody Australians, wouldn't ever only force him online there. Yeah. So Mitula come back, and people said to me, we want you to lead us. So made things difficult for me because we had to find a way. Then we heard that the PNG government might send the army to fix us. So I had a mental telepathy. I decided to ring chief. I went to the district office, asked the district commissioner, could I use the government phone to ring? And we don't know that, you're a rebel. So, okay, Maski. So I went to a businessman, my very good friend. He's an SDA, very good man. Me talking, hey, please, me know, I got no money, and can you allow me to use your phone? Oh yeah, by all means. So I used his phone and I rang Chief. Man, Chief Yarem, he was so happy. He only last night, Lady Veronica was telling me to ring you. And as he put it, because he used to, call me long pater of Bougainville. So he was so happy, and I said, Chief, call a truce. Truce is
What year was this?
there was
It was after independence?
after independence, yeah. It was towards the end of 1975 or beginning of 76.
Right.
Yeah, it was a critical time.
So things were already tense in
Yeah, very tense.
Bougainville PNG relationship.
Yeah. So I went, Chief agreed, truce. I mean, peace yet, but don't fight. Let the leaders talk. So Chief said, he said, are you sure you can convince him? I said, I'm sure. I was so fired up. I said, I'm sure I'll convince him. I didn't know how to do it, but I said, I'm sure I will. And he said, all right, I'll send you a helicopter. I said, no, I'm a helicopter now. If they see me going around in a helicopter, they'll say, well, you have been bribed. So I said, no, I'll do it my way. So I went to Radio Bougainville. At 7 o'clock, I spoke. I told the people of Bougainville, I said, we are Christians. We are not cowards. Let's not fight. Let's talk. And I said, I mentioned to them that we could propose to have a truce with government. And actually told him, yes, I spoke to Grand Chief Minister of Papua New Guinea, because by then he was already Prime Minister. No, he was Prime Minister.
Prime Minister.
So we talked all on radio, finished. Then I said, can somebody come with me to go drive from Marawa all the way to Panguna, Nagovis, the South Bougainville. And these back, nobody volunteered. It's difficult even with people you are supporting. Easy to talk, but then one very good person, unfortunately, he has been killed. A man by the name, the late John Beaker. He was a university graduate, and he was a member of the provincial government that drafted the proposal that he was taken to Port Moresby. This was after independence, much later. Sorry, when he accompanied, it was before he was elected to Parliament. Anyway, he said, the government wouldn't let me have a government vehicle, so me no got money. So he drove me in his own vehicle. Me apply go. I confronted a lot of people on the roadblocks, the lights, the roadblocks, and I had to get out quickly. And, when they saw me, they said, I'm Redskin, I'm Momis, I'm Gaman. Look at it, we find out. Momis, through Momis. Momis is talking the radio now. Okay. He's in Kieta. Looking me down to Aiturueman. So it was not easy, but I was blessed. I was really fearless. I was ready to take on the challenge. I said, we are Christians, don't fight. We can do better things than just fighting. Give us time to have a delegation and meet the Prime Minister. I had 4 meetings during the night. When I got to my place at home, it was 6 o'clock in the morning. It was a market time Saturday. We went to Mani Boom, we talked to all. We had people who didn't believe, and I said, no, give us a chance. So in the end, it worked out. Samara sent Oscar Tamur, and Rabbi Namali was just appointed district commissioner of Rabaul. So we met on Arobo Island, and we agreed on the new Bougainville it was called Bougainville Agreement, but not Bougainville Copper Agreement. It's Bougainville, the political agreement, which gave Bougainville
And that was between
Papua-
Bougainville and Papua New
Papua New
Guinea.
Guinea.
And the company?
No, this was, no, it was a political agreement to establish a highest autonomy that I was referring to, which not only for Bougainville was clearly spelled out for any other districts as and when they develop the capacity. So,
You effectively would have bought an extra 10 years of peace before
yes.
88, everything broke out of control. So you bought 10 years worth of peace. Why did 1988 happen? Why did the conflict spark again? Was the government just delaying on its
Government,
promise?
the government wouldn't give the funds,
It wouldn't fund the provincial government?
wouldn't give them sufficient funds. They kept on delaying things, and it was really, I don't want to, but you know, it's finance department and Bougainville Copper. I really fought for the national government, and told the Prime Minister then, Sir Julius, that look, you know, I think you have to be fair to the people of Bougainville. They've lost so much through no fault of their own, and you are now siding with the company. And this proposal we are making will also give PNG government something you should be supporting, and you are not. You know, a much better equity. But
So
and he refused it. Instead of listening to me, the regional member, I was also minister then. He listened to his own ministers, who went to Bougainville, came back and told him it's okay, don't worry. And when he refused, I actually said to him, my dear Prime Minister, you have now sown the seed of a bloody revolution. I actually said that. Said, now you have sown the seed of a bloody revolution.
this was in the
That was
80s
after,
leading up to the conflict?
leading up to the conflict,
Yeah.
yes. And then, that's it, it happened. They wouldn't listen. Unfortunately, they listened too much to the bureaucrats who are not in touch with the people of Bougainville.
So if you fast forward now to today, you know, Bougainville, AROB, autonomous region, what are some of the challenges you see in terms of the development, the growth of maybe perhaps leadership, development of leaders, young Bougainvilleans rising up the ranks, being educated in Papua New Guinea, around the world as well, coming back? What are some of the key challenges?
I said earlier, I'm a systems, institutions are developed and created by human beings, by leaders. So ultimately, in the final analysis, leadership is number one. If you have good leadership, we're not trying, you know, it's not not creating systems and things that they are secondary to leadership. We want qualitative change, not quantitative change. Leadership is very important, and must be moral leadership as well as, you know, politicals, you know, holistic, you know, leaders who are concerned about real human development and not just spoon feeding people and hoping that they will listen to you because you give them things. That's a system today. DSIP, PSIP. It's legalized corruption.
Yeah. Do you think we should outlaw those?
Outlaw.
They're
That
pretty
kind
much
of
slush
that slush fund, that kind of money should go to the provincial government,
Yes.
not to a member. A member of parliament is a legislator. He should be an expert in legislating, promoting laws to promote and protect his people, and to speak on behalf of his people, you know.
Are the people or the government of Bougainville systematically, are they entitled to receive funds that the national government budgets for them through the budget process?
Yes.
Are they entitled to receive it without question, without holdups and delays?
No, no. We have a bureaucratic inertia, and the bureaucrats have so much power they can manipulate. And I know so much about decentralization, the need to empower people. I was president for 2 terms, and all we experienced was uh, fighting with the national government all the time,
Just to get money?
just to get money.
Is it by law that the money must be released, or is that
By law,
just
yes.
a budget?
By law, it must be released.
So,
Because
so
especially
the
for,
withholding is unlawful.
especially for Bougainville, because we're trying to solve a crisis, and you know, at least you must create something which will involve the leaders and people in a fulfilling engagement, something
Yes.
that is fulfilling, that will open them up, encourage them to, you know, talk and negotiate and, you know, come to some kind of agreement with the national government. The more you don't even respect, you don't even respect agreements signed with the national government, what do you expect the people to think of you, you know?
What about the people on the ground, the people in the districts, the
Right
members
now,
of the local LNGs?
right now, even the ABG is not doing what they should be doing. As I said earlier, and I was speaking in Manus on the 49th anniversary, and I said, "Yublalo kawas yublano got power. Yublalo man sabe. Yet power you government got power. Now, in fact, all the power. All the provincial governments of Papua New Guinea have no power. The only place we got power in Bougainville, but problem of people are now. No got more in the leadership too in the Woguta. So it really takes courage, and it really needs visionaries, really. Apart from you got to have technocrats and, you know, good people and so on and so forth. But in the final analysis, unless you have an ideologue who has a vision, and what is a visionary? Visionary is somebody who sees the future and takes steps now, in the here and now, to make the future happen.
Yeah. We don't have that. We don't have that vision. As I was saying earlier regarding our politicians who are introducing laws, the laws that are being introduced, even constitutional amendments, they're very short-sighted.
Very short-sighted,
Very
yeah.
short-sighted, and so we are not looking beyond our own existence. We are looking like the politicians are looking just within my lifetime. They're saying, let's pass a law to protect or entrench my powers at this time. The visionary leadership is really lacking. What are your thoughts on like how we get there in regards to developing visionary leadership?
Yeah. Number one, I think the CPC, the Constitutional Planning Committee, should have pushed harder to get the government to have a program, well-funded program, and also require universities and churches and trade unions, teachers' colleges, to embark on a what I would call conscientization program, awareness, to create awareness, promote social obligations, not just human rights. Because you talk along your right belong you tend to become selfish. You don't care about others. I have an obligation to share with you. Yes. I have an obligation not to destroy your opportunities. Yes. I have an obligation to say, all right, I'll accept lesser things so that you can also have something. You know, I think we have really failed. And, you know, I'm surprised that churches don't do anything. They're talking about things that are not related. I mean, they're important, yes, but you must also talk about things, tangible things that people feel and they are suffering, and tell them, look, this is related to that. You must do these things so that you can be liberated.
at the moment, like after meeting you and having our conversations, I think I would love for young people to probably go through seminary, at least go and get a seminary education. Because I think lots of young people just are not understanding the basic principles of statehood, nationhood, governance, democracy, republic, the dignity of the human person. And we're kind of making things up as we go along. Even our young leaders coming up, there's a disconnect between the ideologies that are supposed to be the foundations of our nation versus the policies. And people are more policy driven as opposed to ideology driven. And one of the things that I think would be a significant um, player in changing the way we do things is our political party system. Because our political party, from what I understand as I hear you and read about the early days, pre-independence, independence coming up, is that political parties were ideology driven. Right now, they are policy driven. And so they're coming up just to give us, the fish for the day. They're based on how we give people fish. They're not based on how we teach the people how to fish long term. And so, what are your thoughts on the political party system at the moment and how we can cause some change within that system?
Political parties are important in the sense that you need you need to mobilize people, so parties can do that, but not not using, not dictating to the political, not using money to buy votes. Today, many members, I mean, it's public knowledge in Bougainville that many leaders won through massive corrupt use of money. Policemen are involved, electoral officials are involved. Yeah. There's no trupla election.
Yeah, there's no real, when people are considering joining political parties,
For
there's
example,
no real consideration of what the political party can
stands
do,
for. Yeah,
stands for.
yeah. No, there's no. And money. Now it's
and,
money.
and the leader is probably trying to get people together so he can become prime minister.
Yes, and
Power.
people join a political party depending on how much money you receive from the party leader.
And they become beholden to the party.
That's right. Yes.
Funds.
Yeah.
So
It's unless we change this, then things have gone to the dogs.
It's a big, massive. It's a massive glitch in the system.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Even politicians right now, even if they think along, good lines and good principles, they don't have the freedom to function within what they actually believe.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because they're beholden to the party. Or
Yeah.
if they're in government, they're bound by government caucus. They don't vote independently on bills. They're just like bound by the political party system. So it's a very big problem there.
Leaders are not accountable to the people anymore.
No.
It's the other way around. The people are being forced to be accountable to the leaders. Leaders' wishes, intentions, goals. It's sad, really. We've really gone backward.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we have legalized corruption. It's sad, very sad. And what's the use of educating Papua New Guineans intellectually, morally, and technically when we can't even take a stand? We're being led by people who are, I don't know. It's terrible.
What would be? We mentioned briefly DSIP, PSIP. I would think that's something that has to be outlawed.
Should be outlawed.
We can't give we can't give the Prime Minister or the executive government the power to control people because they have the power of the purse
Exactly.
to the PSIP and DSIP. What else do you think, if we were to remove something, one thing or two things from the current system that is an impediment, or not remove but change, what would they be?
Do away with DSIP, PSIP, and give it to the provincial government. Give provincial governments legislative powers. When there was a review done by the Constitutional Law Reform Commission under the chairmanship of the late, was a
Lawrence Cullinan?
no, he was from Western Britain. Turangui Dai. I was
Or as
I forgot.
chair?
as chair of the Constitutional Law Reform Commission. They recommended. They said, go back to the CPC recommendations. Give powers to the provinces. Because by giving powers to the provinces, you are enabling people, people's representatives at the provincial level, to be involved in the process of government. And they have a taste of building a nation. Because people are Bougainville, people are Naraplakan Manet, Sipik Naraplakan Manet, Papua, all the provinces are different. Although we are different, we are richly, because the diversity makes us so rich. Suppose we can run him, we may all participate. Because problems of Bougainville are different from problems of other districts. So you should give that government the power to deal with those issues and mobilize its population for nation building. So now this Lanogat. Really, it's really a massive, evil.
It's a massive flaw in our system, or a glitch, and unfortunately we've put it on ourselves. This system of, we had, prior to 1995, we had the premiers of each province, and they were like the local prime minister.
Yeah.
They were like the local prime minister of each province, and they had some independent power. Yeah. And at the same time, we had a provincial member. I was too young, obviously, to understand these things, but you had a member representing the province in the national government.
Yeah.
So what happened in 1995 in the reform is now they've merged those two people.
The provincial member becomes a governor.
So now he's wearing the same person, the one person is wearing two hats. He has to think nationally, but then he has to also think provincially.
But he's got no legislative power.
But he's got no legislative powers. The provincial assembly is pretty much consists of national parliament members as well.
And also people who are not elected.
And not elected members.
Members of the provincial governments today are not elected.
So you don't have.
They're just appointed.
You don't have a real provincial government.
I don't.
You don't have a real provincial. It's on paper, because when you think about it, it's very clear when you think about elections. You have national elections, and then you have local level government elections. Where's the provincial elections? There's nothing. So there's a big gap in the representation.
Okay, the national government might use the excuse, it's a pretext really, to say that, well, the provincial governments were not performing. And that was also because they went against my advice. We had this McKinsey & Co. That Sir Rabi Namali was, when he was chairman of the commission, the Public Service Commission, brought him in. They were good in organizing a structural, the arrangement to set up provincial governments, but they ignored one very, very important recommendation as Minister for Decentralization I made, which was, don't introduce provincial governments uniformly. Right. Introduce them as and when the province develops a capacity. Right. Because you became nothing. Right. Some provinces were not ready, and that's when they messed it up through no fault of their own. And now MPs using this as a reason to get rid of them. Wrong national government yet.
So on one hand, they gave a sweeping powers to everyone.
Yep.
And then when a few of them messed up, they brought a sweeping measure to remove
to
the
remove them. And also, they, at the time, many provinces were not getting the money that they were legally entitled to. They were being starved by this highly centralized bureaucracy here.
Even now, they're not getting it.
Now, no, but we've gone back, we reverted back to the colonial system. Konedobu bosimi now, Waigani bosimi.
Why is the new colonized?
The new Konedobu. Now it's, in many ways, PNG Constitution is quite unique. But I met a professor who came to the Waigani seminar, and he was looking for, somebody told him I was the minister, so he came to my place. And he said, I just want to meet you and tell you that your constitution is not only legal, it's not only a great legal document, it is in fact a great moral document, which no other constitution in the world comes close to. So we have a good constitution which is totally ignored. Totally ignored, not only by, you can't blame the people when the leaders don't abide by the constitutional principles. What do you expect the people to
That's
do?
the thing that saddens me. It's great constitution. I love the preamble. I think the preamble of the constitution should be mandatory readership for every
That's right,
citizen
yeah.
of Papua New Guinea. And people who want to be naturalized should
Yeah,
memorize it
yeah.
as well by heart. But it seems to me that we are pulling out the threads of that great constitution slowly. Every constitutional amendment is like a ripping out of a thread in that constitution, and it saddens me that one day we might look at it and say, what are we? Who are we as a nation?
Well, competition is good because human beings are by nature competitive, but discrimination in favor of some is not competition. You are actually favoring some people at the expense of others. And yet, all citizens are entitled to the same treatment from their own government, and that's not happening.
It's not in law and in effect, in a way, the law enforcement.
Yeah, yes,
systems
yes,
don't implement the law.
The other thing is the PNG Constitution is it promotes justice. It's very strong on justice. People have a right to have education. Now, planning something, the government is album sambla line that's all at the expense of others. People are being victimized by a very insensitive, corrupt government, actually.
Yeah, well, the system, unfortunately, is a ineffective system in terms of promoting justice and freedoms and the dignity of human. Not from the foundation. I think the foundation was good, but then over time we have eroded those foundations, and now we're in a system where corruption is actually promoted and entrenched and protected, whereas freedom and the integral human development of people is being stifled.
When in the old days, Grand Chief Sumare and I would win our seats with 80% of the votes all the time. The others didn't get much, but because there was no corruption, all money vote long, luksabe long, service long, members' contribution long. I was I fought. I didn't really. Maybe that's my weakness. I didn't talk about distributing money. My emphasis was to empower people so that they themselves would find the money,
I don't know
generate
what
money.
people are. I think the elections are also demonstration or a strong illustration of a lack of understanding or lack of education or awareness of people in regards to their own power and their own sense of agency. Because you can see that they are voting mostly on this guy
Yeah.
is my savior, or this lady is my savior, and therefore I need to empower her to save me, to protect my welfare, to do all this and that for me. So there's the elections are really good demonstration of that serious lack of empowerment in our people when they vote according to what they think the candidate can do for them, as opposed to, I can do this myself, I just need him to get government to create a facility or the environment for me to thrive as an individual human being. So that's the way I see election. It's like a illustration of a poor state of affairs in the mind of our people. Unfortunately, it's a sad analysis, but I think it's an accurate one.
Yes, but it's not too late.
It's not
Not too late. The PNG Constitution really, this integral human development or holistic development means the motive the government should drive the government is to empower Papua New Guineans and not to manipulate them. Manipulate them to support them, to do whatever they want. When you empower people, then the people will make their leaders accountable.
Yes, exactly.
Now it's not
It's not the case.
not the case.
Unfortunately. But we hope that, my hope is that through education, through all our, social actions to empower people, I hope that it grows and it becomes more as our people become more educated. Yeah. I think lack of education or lack of the right information is a big oppression on our people. And so education is key.
Exactly.
But what are your thoughts as we come to a close? What are your thoughts on the most positive things that you see right now in the nation today that you think will gives us some hope and we're not really it's not all doom and gloom for us?
Well, what I want to say, although I'm disappointed, the leadership is the result of the people's failure to set a high premium on leadership.
Yes.
It is the electors who should set the standard and require the leaders to comply, or else they don't get elected.
Yeah. Well, in an ideal democracy, that should be the case.
Let me, the fundamental principles which the CPC recommended. One, the nation building can only come through active and meaningful participation, meaningful involvement by the people in their own involvement in their own development, not handouts, not giving the SRP, PSRP. Two, development is people-centered, with emphasis on development of people rather than development of the country and its resources. Now, we are adoring resources, but the benefits of that accrue to the nation as a result of exploiting our resources, where does it go? The people are getting poorer and poorer. We are being further alienated. To be actively and meaningfully involved in their own development, our people must have the right to participate in the political process of decision making at all levels.
Yes.
National level, provincial level, and local level. And principle of subsidiarity, we talk in this. You must never deny smaller bodies from participating in decisions about their needs and hopes and aspirations.
Yes.
They themselves must be involved. Fourth, Papua New Guinea must be a free society with our people being given constitutional guarantees for their freedoms and for their basic human rights. Social obligations to us. Look and look to right belong that's all. You got right, that's you got obligation too. And lastly, the future of our country depends not just on the systems of government established, but more importantly on the quality of leadership shown by those who are elected or appointed to public office. When the CPC was having a lot of problems with the colonial government, we were also very much conscious of the need to make use of opportunity offered by independence to free ourselves from structural and attitudinal impediments to real development. Real development of our people. Hence, we were not merely interested in quantitative change, we believed that our people must not only become objects of development, but also subjects of development. It is the Papua New Guineans who must be empowered to drive the thing and not be mere recipients of goods and services. In other words, they must become active agents of change and development, not mere passive recipients of goods and services. PNG being a highly diversified society, we recommended a system of decentralized government based on the principle of subsidiarity, which advocates that lower levels of government must be. The new reforms of 1995 do not respect the principle of autonomy and subsidiarity. Under the new system, the provincial governments and local level governments have become mere agents of central government with no autonomy for legislative initiatives, as was the case with the old provincial government system. The new reforms is a system of control rather than a system which liberates and harnesses the creative energies of the people at the local level to give them a sense of meaningful and reflective involvement in determining their own destiny. We believed in the importance of the rights and freedoms of our people. We tried to achieve a balance between rights of individuals and the interests of the community that we were referring to earlier. We tried to give effective or equal access to the services provided by government, including those institutions associated with judicial process, and we've provided for an ombudsman commission to deal with unfair administrative practices. Woklong ombudsman is to deal with administrative. Today, some teachers who graduated 5 years ago still have no pay. There are nurses serving in the rural areas who have not been paid. And the leadership code deals with that. The leadership code doesn't just require a leader to behave well. He must also be seen to be behaving well. If he's not, then he should resign and become an ordinary member of parliament, ordinary member of society. A leader is a role model. It doesn't need evidence for a leader to charge a leader.
The concept of being seen to be doing the right thing, it seems to me like over the years it has eroded because our leaders no longer care about their own reputation. It seems to me like that I don't care what you guys think of me. You can
No.
think me sparkman or me womanizer or me
Yeah.
corrupt man, worriedly like it's like they don't have any care at all about their own reputation. Because when you look at developed society, people people are so afraid of being being destroyed in public. Their reputation's been destroyed in public. That once, like you said earlier, once there's a news breakout of a conflict of interest situation, they say, okay, me step aside. I resign, or I confess, or I do something to resolve this and restore my own reputation. In Papua New Guinea, it seems like there's a lack of that self dignity.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so we talk our leadership code. It says you must not only do the right thing, but you must be seen to be doing the right thing. It is not enough, however, that leaders are free from corruption. It's not enough for a leader. Yes, you must be free from corruption, but they must also have commitment to the national goals and national goals as set out by the Constitution.
Well, that's it. The national goals are being
Completely ignored.
almost disregarded by the powers that be.
To tell you the truth, the national goals and directive principles of PNG Constitution are nowhere to be found. Honorable country in South Toloan. Maybe they have other ways of ensuring that, like Australia, suppose you declare 1 bottle of wine, fail to declare it, and that is enough to force you to resign. A very famous Australian Liberal Party woman used government funds to hire a helicopter to go and attend the family wedding along some level of middle Central Australia. Time news reported she resigned.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. John Momis. It's been almost 2 hours now of conversation. Thank you for bringing some of those thoughts to us. And I probably mentioned to you in our coffee break, I hope that your book will come together soon and you leave that collection of ideas and information and stories for Papua New Guineans to read in posterity and in perpetuity. I think one of the things I started this podcast is to record these thoughts and these stories because we don't really have them in, especially the format that our young people are currently embracing now. So we can, look back in the future. But I'd like to say thank you for allowing us to have you on the podcast again for a second time. It's been a great discussion, I think, and I've learned a lot, and I'm really inspired and challenged. So I wish you all the best. And I don't know, you have one last thing to say? You can share it before we go.
Yeah, thank you, Wayne. I think we have failed, including myself. We should really not use, we should engage the young people of Papua New Guinea, young men and women, and equip them with the necessary information, necessary things we believe they should, promote, to motivate our people to live according to these are national goals and directive principles. And I think we have done that. We have many young people who are just running around. And I think, suppose you are lapun in the working, young people are ready to do it, but you must equip them.
Yes.
Belong a techie man or no, don't talk. Look, let's be proud of who we are and let's excel. Because PNG, I was just talking to somebody from one of the foreign embassies. The man they came up like talking to me now, me. And we talk, how come Papua New Guinea is so richly endowed with resources, big population, and yet, legally country in Pacific or look winning Papua New Guinea. That is a man, I'm new man. Ready, let me come. Now lately, me are former Foreign Minister of Australia, Julie Bishop. Liberal Party. Online ko Sydney, Mary, kirap talking more. You want to stop begging. You are so rich, use resources. Stop begging all the time. Man, me talking to it's about time somebody told us. And you miss I go attend more meeting along Sydney or America. Every man and his dog goes there. Salim sample line da sol di go bali tok. Na yesra imo kata go na yet time lo mani safa ino got out sick. Hey, no got to lo money go away. So well, something to honestly to tell you, Wayne, Bob, really, PNG. We are lucky we are not. By the way, PNG is one of the few countries in the world which is still not constitutionally in trouble. What is it? Long by got military coup in us. We are very lucky.
Well, I have my theories on why that's not the case, because we seem to have the elements that would lead to that, but we don't have the one missing ingredient, I think, which is the significant unity of the people. I don't think the people are united enough to fight against the government. That's one thing that I think our diversity it helps us to have. It helps us to have a balance of powers throughout the nation. I don't think we'll ever descend into a state of civil unrest because we can never be united enough. Like you see, for example, in the city, when you have two parties at war with each other, one ethnic group against one ethnic group, all the other ethnic groups stay out of it.
Right.
There's a lot of people at fight now solving problem because we are not one ethnic group, or we are not two ethnic groups like the Tutsis and the Hutus in Rwanda, right? We will not have. That's just two groups.
That's right.
They all came against each other. In Papua New Guinea, we will never have enough unity to rise up against the government. So what we always need is we need pockets of leadership that will rise up and say, move against the government using the existing system. To bring change within the existing systems, but then to change the system as they go along. So that's my theory on why that's happened. But I think I agree with you, and I'm so thankful that we haven't descended into constitutional crisis to the point of civil war, because everything that's happening, it almost justifies that. But fortunately, we don't have that one missing ingredient, which is the unity of the people that will rise up against a corrupt government. So that's what I think. The military itself, in some countries, the military rises up against a corrupt government. I don't think we'll ever have that. Sandline was probably a good test of how united was the military in such a thing, but that was for a season and for a little event, not little, like generally an event, and it came to pass in another way. But we'll always have this system that we will have to use to change it within itself. That's my theory of why we haven't descended into chaos. But anyway, again,
probably for the same reason, because we are so diversified, maybe for the same reason, we don't unite to promote good things. Some like working, some like support, okay, something belong. But that's why we have CPC been talked strong through on social obligations. Nobody cares about that. Yes, my right, but so what about my obligation? When I see my resources, environment, Long Catholic Church now, current Pope here, he's talking about environment or something, I must protect him. He's talking about synodality. We must all collaborate. Asking you, big man, you must come along, sit around, or one blood table, and talk. CPC been talked to people yet. Pope Francis now to talk again. Mipla we talk long and before Rio summit, first environment meeting only in Bougainville, Rio. We were way ahead of our time. But the problem is we never took the trouble to create awareness. Churches don't talk about it. They talk about important principles, but they're isolated from the actual experience from Oman. So anyway, that's the goals and principles of our Constitution are worthy to, fight for. I think we must find a way to conscientize our people and convince them that instead of begging, let's unite and develop our resources and promote social justice. Doken Dr. Salong Ali Muluman Oligat. When they burned this place in Guerrero, I was asked, what do you think about it? But I won't say it now. It will remind much of me. But I said, we are strangers in paradise. What do you expect the people to do? And play small, but who owns these things? PNG Constitution is quite clear. We discriminately, we favor, we talk, promoting Papua New Guinea man marry first, because we are the most exploited. Now you will let them, who said you will go ahead? Not the Papua New Guineans. Little pockets, yes, but foreigners. And that, I think, is a mortal sin. The Constitution of our country must protect and promote the interests of Papua New Guineans first. Because not, then we are really sinning against our own people.